You know, we all go through unexpected challenges. We have big dreams, then life hits bake. I'ma explain my little story and maybe it can help you get through your current unhealthy situation so you won't miss out on what you hope and wish for in your future. It's the journey of already. Scrolling through my wish list, waiting on a change. My worth on this earth going through my brain. Everything seems to remain the same. Another year, another L. I'm ashamed. 7 years ago, prayed for something big. Didn't know going through would be as big. Flesh is stressing, body is flexing. Break dancing on my depression. Encouragement from an unknown stranger motivated me like I'm about to be famous. Towel back on shoulder for reaction of anger. My faith started building, mustard seed in danger. Wish list coming at its full potential. Blessings packed inside like bimbo. Making way to my life.
Welcome to the If You Cook, I'll Clean podcast. I am your host, Eli Breeden. Today we have a very special guest with us. He is the Dr. MONTE Witherspoon. He's the pastor of Still Creek AME Zion Church right here in Charlotte. He's the son of Reverend Vera Witherspoon and the late Douglas Brown. Reverend Witherspoon Brown preached his initial sermon in 1994 at Still Hill AME Zion Church in Lancaster, South Carolina, under the leadership of Reverend Dr. Marion R. Wilson. He is a native of Charlotte. Dr. Witherspoon attended public schools and graduated from Olympic High School. He furthered his education at Livingstone College in Salisbury, North Carolina, where he graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree in Religious Studies. While at Livingstone College, he served as the president of the Student Government Association, the national vice president of the Pre-Alumni Council of the United Negro College Fund. He was also the president of the Pre-Theologian and member of the Board of Visitors. Realizing the imperative of academic training and ministry, Dr. Witherspoon matriculated at the Morehouse School of Religion at the Interdenominational Theological Center in Atlanta, Georgia, where he received a Master of Divinity degree with a concentration in pastoral care and counseling. He also has earned the Doctor of Ministry degree from Drew University in Madison, New Jersey. While at the ITC, he was elected president of the Student Christian League, Student Government Association, and served an unprecedented 2 consecutive terms in succession of many profound pastors and community leaders across the United States. As president of the Student Christian League, he developed several community programs in the greater Atlanta area. While in Atlanta, Georgia, Reverend Witherspoon received congressional recognition for outstanding community service by Congressman John Lewis for his service in the Atlanta metropolitan area. Prior to his service at Still Creek, Dr. Witherspoon pastored Caldwell Temple AME Zion Church in the Bronx, New York, St. Paul AME Zion Church in Great Neck, New York, as well as Shiloh AME Zion Church in Aberdeen, North Carolina. I didn't know that, Q. Dr. Witherspoon is very active in the community, formerly a member of Community Board Number 3 in New York City. He served the residents of the South Bronx. He also served as chair of the Policy and Legislation Committee of the New York City affiliate of the National Black Leaders Commission on AIDS. Dr. Witherspoon has served as second vice president of the Black Political Caucus of Charlotte-Mecklenburg. In 2023, he was elected as an at-large member of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Board of Education, where he co-chairs the Equity Committee, the Intergovernmental Relations Committee, as well as the Finance Committee. Dr. Witherspoon is a member of the Prince Hall Masons, and he is a very proud member of my fraternity, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. Dr. Witherspoon is married to Carmen Williams. He is also the proud father of Monty Drew and Maxwell Devon. His favorite activities are reading, traveling, and golfing. Guys, give a special welcome to my friend and my soon-to-be pastor when I decide that I'm going to join the church I've been visiting for years, but I think it's time. Dr. Monte Witherspoon, how are you, sir?
Well, I'm glad to be here. Glad to be here.
Good for you, man. Good. I really appreciate you coming by. I know that you are have a very busy schedule, so I just want you to know that I'm grateful that you are deciding to support us today. So we're not going to keep you long, and I'm sure you hear that quite often as a pastor, and you probably say it yourself, but I actually mean it because I know that you're on a tight schedule. But a couple of questions. So the first question I want to ask you is, what did you think about the book?
Man, it was great when I finally got it, and I jumped on the opportunity as soon as when it first came out, and you told me about it, and of course it was very insightful, and I think it's a roadmap and helps bring clarity, and especially as a black man, and I encourage both men and women to get it and read the book. When I first got it, it sat on our table right there when you come in the house, and I was trying to get my wife to pick it up and read it, but I haven't got that far yet.
Okay.
But I'm sure after this she will.
Absolutely. So I know that sometimes as a minister, and not only just a preacher but a minister, you carry the weight on your shoulder a lot, because you're not only responsible for your family, but you're responsible for the family within the community, the family within the church, and I'm sure I'm leaving something out, but with all of the weight that you carry, and we're going to get on the subject of the book, but all of the weight that you carry, how do you manage all of those things and make time for your family?
Yeah. Well, I think what I do first is to manage myself, and that means that you have to take care of yourself before you can take care of others. And so I have to ensure that I'm balanced as a person, both mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, and taking care of myself. There's more of me available to others than, and that's not to say I put myself first, but you do have to take care of yourself. My family is my primary responsibility as a husband and father. That comes before anything else. I love everything else I do, but if I'm successful at everything else and I'm not successful at raising my children, then I don't think that's much success. And of course, that's my metric anyway. So my responsibility is to my family, and then of course I'm called to the community, and I love serving people. I love helping and leading as well. And so just finding that fine balance, and that's not to say that I'm always successful at finding that balance, but I work at it hard each and every day.
Right. Good. One thing that I can say that I do appreciate about you is that you're honest, and a lot of the messages that you preach, they resonated, and it was almost as if, and everybody says this, but those messages were tailored specifically for them, and I feel that way every time I actually come to church. So that's one thing that I do appreciate about you. Another thing that I can say that I appreciate about you is that you sincerely do love the community, and that's important when you're in the community and dealing with people, because people will know if you're being real or fake or not.
Yeah.
And you say it often when you have individuals who decide to join the church, in which I like is if you guys are looking for a perfect church, this is not it.
Right.
because there's no perfect person. And we're going to get into that as well. So, one of the first questions I want to ask you as it relates to relationships, do you think a couple has to be equally yoked to be successful? Or is the marriage in trouble before it actually starts?
Well, first, let me give this disclaimer. I am in no way expert on relationships. I'm still trying to figure out my marriage, and I'm still learning how to be married. And obviously, if we look back over our lives, I've messed up more relationships than I've been successful at. But finally, I found the right one, and so this has been a blessing. But seriously, well, I was serious about that too. But when we talk about equally yoked, depending on people's context, they look at it differently. You can have a religious person that looks at that. Somebody's really deeply rooted in church, and that means that, that person is that their spouse is going to church with them every day. Kind of keep it in that context. But we talk about being equally yoked. It's more than just it's the whole person. It's the total person, both mentally, spiritually, physically even. But we often leave out, are we equally yoked in our values, and our goals? What do we want out of life? If you have a person going in two different directions, one is driven towards one thing and another is driven towards something totally opposite that has nothing to do with each other. Those are the things that matter. So you have to be equally yoked across holistically. What are our value systems? What do we want out of life? And so I think that's important. So yeah, you do, and at different stages in life, I think, once you're married, marriage is a constant negotiation because we're evolving, and so you have to renegotiate as often as you have to renegotiate. If you get a new job, your hours change. You have to renegotiate your whole household. How are you going to do that? So as we evolve and life changes, we have to constantly reevaluate our marriages and our relationships. And so, but I said that to say that yes, you have to. I believe that you have to be equally yoked in that sense that we share the same values, outlook, perspective on life, how we want to raise our children, how we choose to discipline our children, all of these things, and that requires negotiation.
Okay, I can appreciate that, and to be completely transparent with you, I wasn't going to ask you that question because I didn't want to seem too like I was intentionally asking a religious question.
No, yeah, no,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's something that people would want to know.
Right, yeah.
From you. So another question I have is, during the times that you've counseled couples, right? What are some of the reasons that you see, and we're obviously not mentioning any circumstances, situations, or names, but what are some of the things that you see that cause potential breakups within relationships, whether it be, and I'm sure you do marriage counseling as well as couples counseling or singles counseling as well, if that there is such a thing. But what do you see is some of the biggest reasons why couples don't make it?
Yeah, well, in no particular order, I think there's, obviously finances are huge, how they differ on how they spend money. Of course, there's infidelity, breaking of trust. That's one. I'll put those up there. Of course, we can unpack either one of them. It's a whole lot in either one, various circumstances. But I'll say finances, and of course, when that trust is broken to a certain, that's something different for various people. depending on what an individual chooses to tolerate, right? But the infidelity is one. Those are probably the top.
And that leads to my next question,
Yeah.
right? I don't want to seem too religious, and I'm not, and I don't want to get too immersed from a biblical perspective, but I think people want to know, because you are a minister, is infidelity like, is that like a deal breaker, or is that cause for divorce in a marriage?
Well, okay, so we're not talking biblically. So, like I said, it's everybody tolerates different things.
Right.
There are folks that go through their whole lives, 30, 40 years of marriage, 50 years of marriage, and tolerate infidelity. Then there are folks that, the first instance, they out,
Right.
And so it's what couples or an individual in a marriage is willing to tolerate and negotiate or not negotiate. So it's different circumstance for different people, because different people tolerate different things. So whatever your threshold is, that's that's what it is. Of course, we know we can, we've all been living long enough to know, and there's various situations whether of folks who have made different decisions around that.
Right. And I think, and we'll get into it a little bit later, but I think some people have a misconception of, because I come from a preaching family. I didn't know if you knew that or not.
Oh.
I have preachers all in my
Really?
family,
Okay,
from my
I didn't know that.
grandfather
We have to talk about
on down, absolutely. So we're both learning
Yeah,
a little
yeah.
bit about each other today. But I think there's a misconception, or preconceived notion, if you will, that preachers are supposed to walk around almost like robots and unfazed, or as if they aren't real people. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I guess my question to you is, do you find it difficult sometimes to adapt to certain situations? Meaning, right, you are who you are in terms of the fabric of who you are, and the people that are close to you, they know who you are. So how do you, and this is relative, but how do you make the adjustment from, as a pastor, from one environment to the other? Because people have this notion that, as a pastor, you shouldn't be in certain environments and you shouldn't be doing certain things. How do you adapt or make those modifications?
Well, I'll say this. I lost the need to appeal and please people in that regard a long time ago.
Right.
I've been preaching now. I've been preaching since I was 14 years old. It's 30 years that I've been preaching this year. And there was a point in my life where I lost, I won't say I lost, but I was more concerned with what people were gonna think, whatever I was doing, and I lost a lot of moments. Not necessarily I was just trying to do something crazy or just being I just lost a lot of significant moments that could have brought me joy and happiness, just because I was concerned about what people do. So when I look back at a certain age, I said, you know what, I'm not losing time anymore. I'm enjoying my life. I'm loving God, but I'm enjoying my life at the same time. And it was more important for me, as it is now, to be authentic. So it doesn't matter what environment I'm in. I'm going to show up as myself. And here's the thing: people gonna love you, they gonna hate you. It doesn't matter. If you stay at home all day, they're gonna say, well, why? We don't ever see you. And if you're out in the streets, they're gonna say, well, you're out there too much. So just my thing is to be authentic. So wherever I choose to go and whatever I choose to do, I'm showing up as myself, and I'm always respecting my values. I'm walking in my dignity, and if that's, whether or not that's good enough for somebody, that's not really a concern of mine. Now, I'm not going to be doing anything crazy out there, but You know, if I decided to go out and take my wife out somewhere, then that's what we're gonna do. And listen, the thing is to enjoy life and to be happy. And I think that's what God wants us to do. You know, to have an abundant life, to be joyful and enjoy the things and the things that the earth God has given us in this earth. And so that's and I watch so many times people just, you know, they too repressed. They're not happy. They don't enjoy. You know, they worried about what everybody's gonna think. But so in short, wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, I've learned to be authentic.
Right.
And I think that's what's and it's been effective for me, even in ministry.
Right, and I can appreciate that, and I'll tell you why I asked that question, because I come from a family of preachers, and I see, you know, the contradictions in many respects. Mm-hmm. You know, some of them have to put on this face when they go to church and when they're home. You know, that we get the real them, right. Meaning some of the things and the interactions that we have with them, you know, you probably wouldn't even believe it's the same person. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I ask you that because when you found your wife, right, and I know this is probably not the best way to frame this, but did you meet her as the preacher, Monte, Dr. Monte Witherspoon, or did you meet her as yourself? Does that make sense? Am I framing that correctly?
It makes plenty of sense.
Okay.
I'm a little different than everybody else. So, and many other preachers, I'm not necessarily saying better, but again, like I was saying, wherever I am, I'm 100% authentic. So all of the way I am at home, the way I am on the corner, the way I'm in the streets, or anywhere, it's the same person. You know, you're not gonna come home and see a different version of me, and my kids are not gonna go out and see a different version of me. I show up the same wherever I am, and so when I met my wife, we were. I was telling a story. We were at a bar. She was at a bar. I was at the restaurant.
Yeah, he was at the restaurant. She was at the bar. Yeah. Oh, okay. I got it.
And so, that's what happened. And I actually, matter of fact, I proposed to her at the same place I met her. She was sitting at the bar having a glass of wine after work, and I came in with my friend, my LB actually, and she was sitting over there. Someone got married. I always told her, George, I met my wife. She was drunk, so I had to clean up. I had to clean up, get her right. But no, but seriously, she was sitting at the bar, and I looked over. I said, I said, that's my wife. I hadn't even seen her face.
Are you serious?
Just saw her from behind, and I walked over and
now was that the Holy Spirit or was that Jack Daniels?
It was it wasn't Jack.
You know the brothers drink Crown. But we ain't gonna put that out there because we don't want the bishop to see this.
Well, listen, that was how long it's been, 8-9 years now.
Okay.
It was and so. My LB had to run interference. He ran interference. No offense if anybody watched this, because she was with a friend, and so I get a moment to talk to her, and I sat there with her, man, and we had so many things in common. And the thing that appealed to me is that I didn't have to explain myself to her. She had such a background at the time. She understood exactly who I was as a preacher and as a man, and in that one conversation, I was like, I didn't have to explain any of that.
That's great. And
so I was like, wow, for the first time in all my dating, I've never had to go through these series of questions. Like she got it, and we went on to talk about other things, as we said at that bar that night, and so that's where we met. We met at a bar. I proposed to my wife at the same seat where I met her at that bar. It was a restaurant, but we were at the bar. And it was it was in Harlem, New York. It was kind of like the Cheers of the neighborhood. It's called Harlem Social, and that's where we met, and that's where I engaged. And then we go back. We'll go back, we go back and visit.
That's good, and people actually need to hear this story because, as I mentioned prior, folks have a tendency of just looking at you from a one-dimensional perspective,
Right.
and they don't see like you're multifaceted, and you know there are multiple layers.
Yeah.
You know, and people need to hear, you know, the real stories. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right. Right.
And they're not, you know, piecing and making up things and fabricating things. And you know, it's just a way of you showing people, you know, I'm real.
Right.
And that's what, you know, I believe, and I'm not turning this to a religious show, but I believe those kind of stories,
Right.
those honest stories, is what brings people to the Lord.
That's right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not, oh, we met in church and Bible study, and you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
right,
Nah,
right.
that's just not real to me. But
Right.
and with that point, it leads to another to another question. So, as far as marriage is concerned, do you think? And I know the answer, but I want to hear your version. Do you think people get married for the wrong reason? And before you answer that, I just want to clarify that. So, some individuals get married because they've been together for so long, right? Some individuals get married because of pregnancy. You know what I mean? And a lot of men that I know got married because it was what was on the table. It was an ultimatum. We've been together so long. Either you want to be in this relationship, or you don't, and because they don't want to lose. You understand what I mean? That female, they decide they're going to get married, and sometimes it's premature, and it doesn't work out because they weren't ready.
Right.
So do you find that some people get married premature, and some people get married for the wrong reasons?
Yeah, I believe that I've seen instances where, and I'll leave it for them to say whether or not it's premature. But we,
Right.
you know, from outside of looking in and just hearing the stories, of course, there are folks that couples that get married, you know, prematurely for a host of reasons. Then that the question becomes, why do we get married? You know, why does one want to get married? Well, I got married because I love my wife and I want a better life with her, and I believe that I found someone who loved me, and I had a friend of mine. He I won't tell you the whole context of the question on this podcast, but he helped me put things in context when he married his wife. He said, you know, he went through a series of things, but he said, Ken, I find, he's like, all these other women that, you know, other females that, you know, he could have chosen or whatever. He said, but could I find anybody? He had to ask himself this question: could he find anybody that would love him and more than she loved him? And the question was no. Nobody. He had never experienced love at that level, and that's why he chose to marry his wife. It wasn't because of material things, it was physical things, because he loved his wife, and that is what sustains us. And even sometimes people love each other, and then life happens and they still go their different ways. One person checks out. But I think at the core, you have to love somebody, and you have to want to be around that person and enjoy
Right.
them. So, but yeah, they're right reasons. They're wrong reasons maybe, but that's for individuals to determine. But at its core, you have to love somebody. You know, you have to love. So I got a friend who's married. He's still married. Never met his wife in my life. They got married so she could get citizenship. But
Oh, okay. That would explain it. That would explain
I
it.
mean, they've been married longer than people that.
I mean, are they together, or she's just here?
They
They live together?
No, they don't live together, but
Oh,
they
okay.
stay in touch, and they'll meet up and whatever.
Your friend might be on to something. You think?
Listen, it worked. It's working. It's working, man. It's working. They negotiate whatever, you know. Yeah. So, but anyway, what I'm saying is that you know, there are folks that, you know, I thought would be married forever.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, though. Life happens. Life happens, and we don't know until we know what circumstances will be, and we can only hope and pray and do our best and invest everything we can to ensure that we remain faithful and stay committed to our marriages. But life happens, you know, and folks have to just be willing to accept those terms and bounce back and realize that it's not the end.
You know what, that you made a very valid point as far as life happening, and it just reminded me of a question that I did want to ask you about divorce, right? So don't really know how to frame the question, but I don't want to sound crazy when I'm asking you this, but what does the word say about divorce? Like, you know, I've heard a few different things about the word as far as the Bible's interpretation. I said that wrong, but from your perspective, what does the word say about divorce? Like, is it like a negative connotation associated with divorce from a biblical perspective? Because I've heard several different analogies. That's the word that I'm looking for. Several different analogies. And I'm just curious to know.
Well, you know, and as a pastor and a theologian, I have to tread carefully because when we talk about what marriage and divorce was in the Bible thousands of years ago, and what it is today. For instance, I can't honestly just put our two contexts together. There's a whole different worldview, a whole different set of circumstances. For instance, and I say this: we talk about marriage in the Old Testament and all into the New. Women didn't have rights. You know, they didn't at times have a choice in who they were going to marry. As a matter of fact, many times a woman in the biblical times couldn't even divorce. A male could divorce. You remember, well, not to get into a biblical story, but when
I probably won't remember anyway.
Mary.
I'm gonna pretend as if I do.
Yeah, if you do the shaking,
Mary. Yeah, I remember Mary.
Mary, Jesus' mama.
Oh, yeah, that Mary.
That Mary.
I thought you was talking about Mary that was up the street, lived up the street from me. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that Mary, but Jesus' mama. And, you know, said when she came up pregnant, said that Joe's going to put her away privately, issue her a bill of divorce. If you talk about the woman who Jesus was caught in the act of adultery, right? Whatever that means. And he said, you have 5 husbands and the one that you have is not your own. Well, it could have been, not that she was promiscuous, but it could have been that she did not have the ability to carry a child. And so, of course, that your progeny, you're building your legacy, that's what marriage was about too, having children, building your legacy. And if she couldn't do that, in her culture, she could be given a bill of divorce, and maybe that's the case. She was in a trauma cycle of being married and not being able to have a child, and then that husband giving her a bill of divorce. So different ways to look at the text and biblical stories about marriage and what it means to be married. Now we have women have rights today. You know, they can choose who they want to marry. They can go down to the courthouse like everybody else and file a petition for divorce. So we have to be careful when we say, what does it mean? What does the Bible say about marriage? And try to apply automatically to there's a whole different culture, whole different set of circumstances. But I do believe that God wants desire just to have family and to enjoy the fruits of a partner. So, but to be divorced, listen. The point is, just like things didn't work out then, people got divorced back then. Uh, People get divorced now for various reasons, but the circumstances were different, and of course, like I said, women necessarily didn't have right. Not saying today, talking about biblical times, women did not have certain rights, and so we can't automatically just transfer one to the other.
Right. Which leads me to my next question, right? So we understand that, there was divorce in the Bible, and all the scenarios in that particular scripture, or passage that you were referencing, pretty much describes that. But let me ask you this: how do you navigate conflict in a marriage? Right. So, don't want to make it too personal with myself, but I'm going to reference the book.
Mm-hmm.
So there were some stories in the book where oftentimes there was conflict in the marriage for various reasons, whether it be the wife wasn't putting out, meaning not having sex with her husband, withholding, amongst other things, maybe girlfriends getting involved with their marriage, or whatever the case may be. How do you navigate, conflict within a marriage? How do you work through some of those issues?
I think it's so important for us to realize our limitations, meaning, and I think this is individually and as couples, particularly as black people, we need therapy.
There you go.
We need therapy, individual therapy, as well as couples therapy. I had a therapist looking for a new one, but help you really.
You actually helped me find my therapist.
Oh yeah.
I meant to tell you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
When I was in Maine.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but we can touch it.
Yeah.
I don't want you to lose your thought.
Okay.
Yeah.
but you have to. There's nothing wrong with sitting down and having a professional help you figure your stuff out.
Right.
We need that. And if I for those, there's some of us, I came up in a single parent home. All of the models of marriage, my mother did a tremendous job of raising me. But I didn't know what it was to be married. I'm still figuring it out. And so when you reach these points, go get help. I tell people that all the time. No, I can help you to a certain degree as a pastor or caregiver, but I'm not a professional marriage therapist. You need to go talk to someone who can help you, who's versed in marriage counseling and can help you work through and talk through some of those issues.
I'm glad you said that too, because a lot of people, I'm not going to say one or the other, but I have noticed that a lot of women, right, they say, well, I'm going to pray myself through these situations, through these circumstances. I'm going to pray that my mindset changes, my mentality gets better, or my temperament or my attitude gets better. There's one thing to pray about it, right? Mm-hmm. Because, and this is one that I did memorize, so you'll be proud of me, but faith without works is dead, right? So I think it's important to have that prayer foundation, but I also believe you have to put some work into it too. Yeah. So I'm glad you said what you said, because some people, you just have this misconception that, okay, you're a pastor, you have the answer for everybody, and that's not necessarily the case. And I'm glad you clarified that, because you don't.
I don't.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because, and one thing that I can appreciate that you said was, you still, even after coming to me for counseling, you still need to maybe go get some marriage counseling,
Right.
because I'm not an expert in this field,
Right.
and I think, and I'm not that much older than you in age, not even by a generation, I don't believe, but maybe by a few years. But I remember a time when folks went to the preacher for everything,
Right. Right.
and it was a mistake.
Right.
And I'm not saying all, but some preachers would gather the information, right, and they wouldn't be responsible with the information.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Regardless of what their title was or whatever, because that was our therapy.
Right.
We had no other
Yeah.
outlets.
Right.
It was the preacher, it was the barber, it was close friends, it was family. We're getting all of this so-called guidance, but we're being misguided.
Right.
And,
Right.
and not until recently have we adopted or accepted, you know what I mean, that this new, way of, having an outlet is acceptable.
Right. Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? Because you hear therapy at least 10, 15 years ago. It's
Yeah,
like,
it's almost taboo.
I'm not interested in that. I'm not going to therapy.
Right.
I don't need therapy. I'm not crazy, or whatever the case
Right.
may be.
Right.
Even to this day, people still have that mentality.
They do. Yeah.
But I'm glad you clarified that. I'm glad that you made that distinction, because you're not the all-inclusive package for, you know what I mean,
And
for everybody.
and I've seen so much damage done, both to marriages and individuals, because of what I'll call malpractice as a clergy. It's you're going beyond the scope of your expertise and your profession, and you giving really bad advice.
Right.
I've seen people go back into violent situations that they should not have been in, both husband and wife, because of what people thought about how they interpreted the Bible and whatever about divorce and various things, and so so it's we have to know the scope about and our limitations. Yeah.
Right. And I'm gonna go off script just a little bit. Not gonna embarrass you or myself.
Yeah.
Not just yet. Hopefully.
Yeah, right.
I don't drink alcohol anymore. If I was drinking, maybe we would be embarrassed by this point. But what I've noticed, right, from growing up into the church, growing up in the church up until recently, is there's been like a decline of males actually participating or joining the church. What I see primarily now, honestly, not just your church, but I've traveled all over the United States. I've visited a lot of churches, blase, whatever. But it's mostly primarily in the African community, American community churches. It's a large percentage of black females in the church. I'm going off script. Has nothing to do with the book, or maybe it does. Why do you think there's been such a decline in male participation, black male participation, within the black churches? And I think that's a question that a lot of people will want to know.
Yeah.
Outside of if you cook, I'll clean.
Yeah. I think there are many answers to that, many reasons, but one in particular I do think is that when we go back, let's just go back 50 years when, first of all, I will say that women have always been the bedrock. They've always been the backbone of all of our institutions. But that firm male presence and leadership that we once knew, I actually got to see it. And when I grew up, the men stood on the front row of the church. Your officers or whatever, they had a strong presence, right? One of the things I do think is that the particularly black church, we when we stopped our activism in the community. When we stopped speaking truth to power, when we stopped focusing on the condition of our people, and we just became just kind of a spiritual warehouse of sorts. I think that's where we lost it. And so then we stopped talking about the plight of black people, the plight of black men and women, the plight of black children, and so we're going over here, we shouting and we singing, and we collecting money, but our communities are being decimated, and our pastors and our leaders are not at the forefront of our issues. And I think that's where some of the discontent with a lot of where we lost a lot of that male presence. That's just one instance, I think, because we can look at other, we can look at the Nation of Islam even, regardless of whether or not you agree with, their perspective. They've always had a strong male presence, but they also have always had a strong presence in the community as well. And so when we're building these immaculate buildings, but our communities are decimated, and pastor comes in and you never see the pastor in the community. That's why it's so important for me to be. I'm a local community pastor.
Oh, you definitely in the community. So everybody knows you.
Yeah. So that's where it is. I think, and I think that's one thing. And when we as men see our communities being torn apart, but our churches don't have presence. Our churches are not. The doors are not open to feed and clothe and to provide, be a conduit for services to our communities, to provide teaching and training and resources and it's something different for every church. I'm not saying every church does not have the capacity to have a big feed 1,000 people a year, a week, whatever. But every church can do something. We can be present. Every pastor can engage in their community in some way. And I think when we lost that, and we got really comfortable throughout the 70s and 80s and 90s on up until, and then we started replicating white congregations, and we've lost that. And so I think we lost that male presence, and I would say that interest even.
And the reason why I think it's important, and I shouldn't have dismissed it, because it is related to the book in many instances, because ultimately, in order to have a strong family tie or bond, the presence is necessary. Mm-hmm. So, and you may not necessarily know this, but this book was written from a male's perspective, but ultimately it's written because, I want to be a part of, bringing families back together. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And this is a part of that in many regards, because, if anybody reads this book, but especially if a woman reads this book, there's no back and forth in that book.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, she can't argue with the book.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? She has to read it. She has to interpret it however she interprets it. But at the end of the day, it's the truth.
Right.
These stories aren't fabricated.
Right.
So, and our fraternity is big on Christian manhood.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So, I think it's very important that we are a part of bringing families back together. And I know one way, or the way to do that, is don't necessarily. I'm not saying you have to go to church. I'm not going to ever say that to anybody.
I am. I will.
Okay. Okay. So obviously, yeah. Steel Creek and Design, y'all. We're gonna have the cash out. Bring your tithe money to the church. But yes, I think it's very important to have that foundation, because with that foundation, at least you stand a fighting chance.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's another story. I know we don't have long, but that's another story, right? Like, you have women who are attend churches primarily, and their husbands at home watching the game. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? How do you find a balance in that? How does for instance, if and I it could go the other way, but not really. But how do you find how does that female find the balance? You know what I mean?
Right.
Because at that point, are they not considered unequally yoked? Is that such a thing?
Yeah. Well,
Well, how do you feel about
I know of folks who of married. I keep saying folks. I know of married couples who their their husband doesn't go to church, but they have a very strong marriage, very strong bond. So again, I mean, I can't say that, but I will say, imagine what it could be if he was, and of course she can't go home telling him, pastor said you ought to be doing this, you ought to be. You can't go into another man's house telling what another man said.
But that happens
it
often.
does happen, and that's
Yeah.
a problem.
Yeah, that happens quite often.
Yeah.
In relationships. But I was just curious to know, how do they find balance, and how is that viewed, or how is that seen? Because if there's someone coming to church, a female that's married, and they've never even met their spouse, which is a male, how do they navigate through that?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. Absolutely.
And what do you think about that?
Yeah.
Or did I just ask you that?
Yeah, you did. But and my thing, and I've seen those instances, and honestly, there have been times when I'll make it my effort to. I see that as an opportunity. Maybe a husband will come one time. That's my opportunity to reach out. Man, let's catch up. Where you like to hang out? What you mean? Where you like to hang out? I'd just like to catch up with you sometime, man. And I've honestly made a connection with the husband just like that, and they've come and started to develop a relationship. And a lot of times, they're just misconceptions, are just misunderstandings about maybe thought that the wife just spending too much time at church or whatever. Or they just weren't raised in the church. I mean, a whole host of reasons, but that could be an opportunity to reach out to them and the form of friendship and the brotherhood. And I think a lot of times, people have a misconception, for good reason, that preachers up here, but I try to present differently and be authentic in that. And so once a lot of people can connect with you and say, man, I'm a man just like you are. Let's sit down, man. Let's go. I'll go wherever you want to go,
Right.
And we can connect that way. So, but yeah, I guess I hope I answered it around.
You answered the question. And another thing you just brought to my mind. How do you think not you per se, how do you think we can get men to start coming back to church? I mean, what do you think is necessary to potentially, start, doing things to appeal to men to get them to start coming back to church?
Yeah, well, I'll say this, and I think it was John Wesley. He was, from 1700s. He founded Methodism. He said, "The world is my parish, the world is my church." I take that to heart, that we sometimes are trying to get people to come to church. Why don't we go be the church where they are? And that's what's honestly, I've seen a lot of success in that. Every church I've been at, I've gone to people where they are. I've gone to birthday parties, parties, turn up parties. If you invite me, I'm coming.
See, that's why I mess with you.
Yeah.
That's why I mess with you, dog. See, that's what attracts me to church.
Yeah.
The authenticity,
I'm going
the realness.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
We sit out, a couple guys, a couple nights a week, and they
Don't
have
tell
cigars.
too much, Q.
They just but that's
Okay.
but that's where they are.
Okay.
I mean, people can criticize me for it, but that's where they are.
Okay.
And when we can sit down as men and have conversation, the guy told me just the other day, ended up joining church. He said, man, when I sat down with you were outside, and we could talk as men. he wasn't up here, but we connected on that level. He's like, man, he said, you were my pastor at that point.
Absolutely, absolutely, and you're making me want to join the church more and more.
Doors of the church are open.
Can I join right now?
Right
Is that
now,
possible?
it is possible.
No, man.
It is
I'm gonna wait, man. But I promise you that I will be joining very, very, very soon. I think we may have time for one more question.
All right.
So we spoke on a few topics as it relates to relationships and divorce and things of that nature. What do you think is the key to a strong, lasting relationship?
Communication.
There you go.
Communication, I think, builds trust. When you stop talking, that's when you're most marriages, even relationships that go when the communication breaks down, that's when things go from bad to worse. So if folks can communicate, and part of communication, I believe, is listening as well. And I'm not saying that, I'm in no way saying, so if my wife watches this, I'm in no way saying that I'm the chief, I'm the best person on this. I'm trying to practice what I'm preaching, but
Right.
but I do. I even though I'm trying to grow in it. As I say, we're all evolving, and I try to get better at even the things that I already know, and that I may not be the best at right now. But I think if we can communicate, if we can listen, and be open and listen to one another, I think that's it. Because you could once you stop talking, everything's over.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I've been there and I've done that. So, guys, hopefully you've gotten an opportunity to see a completely different perspective. I didn't really go in too much because I still got to go back to church, guys. So I don't want to ruin this relationship. So a lot of questions we're just reserving and saving for later at another time. But hopefully you guys gain some insight from a pastor's perspective, and not necessarily a pastor's perspective, but from a man's perspective first, because he's a man first. And one of the things that he mentioned was, even as a pastor, sometimes, he doesn't always have all the answers. And, ultimately, if you're seeking guidance, obviously you're going to go to God first. But there are more steps that you can take after you go to God, right? Because it's very important that with your faith is activated with work. Your faith without works is dead. That's one scripture that I'll forever incorporate into my life. I believe that wholeheartedly. So we'll leave the description of the church below, as well as any other contact information that people can get in contact with you, and maybe some therapy or therapist or counseling that you guys offer. I'm assuming you guys offer that at the church.
Yeah,
so we'll have that in the description below as well, and we appreciate you guys tuning in. Look, we don't always have all the answers, but one thing that we do know is that if you are following the Lord and you are implementing everything from a biblical standpoint into your life, you're incorporating all of these things, that is a start. But we need you, if you need some help, go get some help, and we'll have that information below. And once again, we appreciate you guys tuning in to the If You Cook, I'll Clean podcast. We're going to have Dr. Witherspoon, if he doesn't somehow, if he's available in the near future. I know he's on to bigger and better things, and we appreciate him even stopping by to spend some time with us. So we appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll see you guys soon for the next episode.
It's getting better. Bake, bake, don't want it to so bake. Depression and suicide thoughts. Brain in another universe. Astronaut. Weight gain going out of control. Can't believe I'm not living what my dream showed. I still smile, even through the pain. With speculating people looking at me strange. I cry for help, water for this flame. But can't tell everyone I'm going through the rain. A bright light made me come to my senses. The talking to myself, self-encouragement. God first, me second, others irrelevant. Repeating to myself, I gotta give it 100. Going back where I came from, not having it. Overflow blessings at my fingertips. Sun shining on me, might as well blow the trumpets. Throw my hands up, thank you God for doing this. Motivated, coming out a struggle. Now I'm anxious, wanting double for the trouble. I can taste the smell of success. Stay calm, wait for the process. Go and let it bake, bake. If I want something phenomenal, woo, come on, patience kick in, let it bake. So the first taste make my mind boggle. Watch the process and let it bake.